finally made it to the Siemens SMM21106LS. So at the time of me making this video, this is, as far as I'm aware, the highest end landscape monochrome CRT that Siemens ever made. And if you've checked out my spreadsheet, you'll see that in the landscape portion of the spreadsheet, she is right there, numero uno. In addition to that, this is also the brightest display I've ever looked at. I didn't say brightest CRT that I've ever looked at. I mean the brightest display, period, that I've ever looked at. Now, obviously, you've read the title, but regardless, we're going to get into that soon. But before we get into that, let's get into the actual specifications, such as the frequencies and all of that. So for the horizontal frequency, we've got a 70 to 140 kilohertz range, which I would say is a lot more comfortable and cozy than the SMM21106L, since 120 kilohertz for your minimum is pretty high, all things considered. So having it as low as 70 on this one is a lot more freeing, I would say. So with the vertical frequency, it's the same situation as the portrait monitor, which I find really weird, because this one states 50 hertz to 130 hertz, which is different than what the SMM21201P states. And yet, in like actuality, when I set custom resolutions, it's 34 hertz as the minimum and 169 hertz as the maximum. So, okay, thanks, cool. The bandwidth I was kind of surprised to see. It's 280 megahertz, which isn't terrible, but like, it's not impressive for what this thing is. I mean, the 21201P is 550, which is essentially double. It's honestly not a big deal though, because going beyond the bandwidth that this monitor is rated for, I did not notice any significant blurring or loss of detail. There probably is some happening, but it's not enough to any degree that I would say is like horrible or even noticeable, to be honest. Of course, the size is 21 inches and then 20-inch viewable, and the phosphor type is good old P45, so we got those smooth response times and no phosphor trails. And we weigh in at 32 kilograms this time around, or 70.54 pounds. And then typical for these monitors, we got the video input, horizontal and vertical sync if you have it to 1B and C, and then a separate vertical sync. Now let's turn to the physical correctero diseñados. What did I just say? So going to the front first, like its higher end portrait cousin, we've got the ambient brightness sensor, and then the little door next to it that flaps down that reveals the serial port as well as a USB-A port. And then further down, we've got a segmented display, and then the wrench button that'll control a bunch of settings such as the position, geometry, whatever the hell, contrast up and down, brightness up and down, and then we get the power button as well as the LED indicators. Now going to the back of the monitor, before we get to like the inputs and outputs and stuff, there's this little tag that I've kept on the shell. I guess I could call this like an order tag or something, but I got this from the liquidation company attached to the monitor. And if I'm gonna be honest, I'm a little bit sentimental about it, so I'm keeping it on there. I mean, there's no harm in keeping it there, so why not? Anyways, before we get to the label, we've got an IEC port, standard power, USB-B, 2 RG11 ports, and then our B and C's for the actual video input. Now going up to the label, we've got a bunch of nice information here, such as the actual model of the monitor, which is, of course, 21106LS. We have the date of manufacture for this specific monitor, 2006, November 2006. Now, yeah, that's pretty late. That's a really late manufacture date for a CRT. Now, if you think that's crazy, I'm gonna have to ask you to hold your breath, because it's gonna get a whole lot crazier, but at the same time, a whole lot sadder. Anyways, this is the back, just so you have all the info on there for documentation's sake. Now let's talk about the brightness. So earlier I stated that this is the brightest display that I've ever seen. And don't worry, I'm not joking. Or should I say, I'm not Joe Kane. I decided to push all of the settings, so brightness plus contrast to the maximum on the monitor. And then I opened up HCFR, took my color monkey, put it on the testing spot, and what did I get for a reading? I mean, are you shitting me? Now hold on, didn't I say 1500 nits? Not 712. Am I capping, Your Honor? Negative. There is a very specific detail that you can easily overlook when looking at the product brief. So let's take a look at it. So in the CRT specifications section, if we zoom in here, take a look at the light transmission. You can see it says 46%. So that means that over half of the brightness that this monitor is outputting is being absorbed by the anti-glare coating. So yeah, this thing is legitimately outputting 1500 something nits. Now, yes, I can take the coding off and then get that reading. It would look really funny and it would be insane because two things would happen. One, my color monkey would probably explode and HCFR wouldn't even be able to get a reading of that. And two, mass panic will spread around the world as the sun stays up for 24 hours straight, when it turns out it's just my CRT in my bedroom. So I don't want to cause that. Regardless, the real reason is just that I don't want to take off a coating on a tube that is exceedingly rare. In addition to that, there was a second monitor that I got as well. If you watch the video that I made on when I had these shipped to me, you'll know what happened to that, and that is what I meant when I said that things are gonna get sadder. But yeah, regardless, I'm gonna show you these photos just so you can get a good idea on how bright this is. First photo here, it looks like Jesus is about to manifest and pull you inside the TV like some Persona 4 shit. This second photo, you can see that my room is being illuminated by this thing. This is a photo of my hand up to it, and you can tell that this was taken last year because my hand does not look like that anymore. What the actual... But take a closer look. You ever stick a flashlight up to your finger, and you know how it's like red, but you can only do that when like a flashlight is like directly making contact with your skin? So my finger, I guess in this case my thumb, is not making contact with the screen literally at all, and it's doing that same effect. Hopefully that gives you just a decent idea on how bright this thing is in person. It is absurd. Alright, so chapter 2, we're going to get into that now. We're going to be talking about the internals. And just to preface it really quick, I'm not going to have a full thing showing every single intricate detail of the inside of it, but I'm going to show you photos in various things that I have of it, because I did have to investigate the insides, not for an arcing issue or anything of the sort, but an issue that I'm still dealing with at the time of recording this video, and that is this weird brightness issue. Everything is just dim. And it's odd because there's a certain adjustment in SMfit ACT, and if I turn that up, it will give me the brightness that I would expect from this monitor back. I've done a lot of things to try and solve it. I'm going to go into that in this next chapter, but I've still yet to solve it. Alright, let's get the painful part out of the way. Yes, I had 2 of these shipped to me. Only one remains. Yeah, I know. Leave me alone! So the other one was necked. We're gonna go over that and the specifics of all of that in the next chapter, but before we get to that, let's talk about the internals. So there is one thing that's different when it comes to the internals of the monitor that got necked. That's the tube sticker. So let's compare the tube sticker of that monitor to the one in the functioning one. So yeah, these do use different tubes. So check this one out. This is the one in the neck tube. PDS, Professional Display Systems. Now, yeah, there is a model number on the tube sticker. I decided to give it a search, and I came across this guy named Frank. I'm not joking. There's this guy that is named Frank, and he's got this datasheet collection of tubes, of CRT tubes. It's honestly a really cool site. I'd recommend checking it out if you want a pretty fun rabbit hole to dive into, but there's actually a PDF of this tube. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to take a look at it. It's just a full evaluation of the actual tube. I don't know, it's pretty cool. Now moving on to the insides of that broken monitor. And I'm going over the broken one first because of the fact that I don't really have much covering it in terms of photos and videos. So the thing that I did with it is plug it in and test it out just to see what happens. Obviously this tube is necked. The phosphor surface is like destroyed because of the air seeping into the tube itself. So it is like done, but I was just curious to see what would happen. I can't say that with a straight face. I also did want to plug it into SMfit ACT. That was like one of the bigger reasons why I did have it plugged in, because I figured that the actual firmware and everything was still obviously, functioning. So I can maybe pull some useful data off of the tube through that, which I did, and we'll get into that as well. I'll also show you me fussing around with the neck of the tube. Oh god. Anyways, let me play those videos just so you can see what that was. Okay, I got the firmware and the data off of it. I got pretty much all I needed off of it. Now I'm just gonna plug it in and give it a signal and see what happens. I don't know why I'm doing this because, it's necked. It's definitely necked, so it doesn't work. And therefore, I'm not gonna get anything out of this. Why am I doing this? This is a terrible idea. What the fuck? Look, ready? Does the screen look like anything when it does that? I wonder. Yeah, so this is making me very uncomfortable. I'm not going to do that anymore. Alright. Anyways, let me explain the brightness issue that I was having. So, by default, when there's a new resolution or whatever, you know how you have to, like, set the geometry and everything because it's just a new preset? Well, the brightness is always just dim as shit. And so when I go into SMfit ACT, there's a setting and adjustment called the video amplifier, and I can actually mitigate this issue by turning up these sliders here. Now, yeah, that's cool, right? Issue solved. Nope. Here's the thing. It requires 20 minutes of being powered on. And this monitor is smart. It is a smart-ass monitor. It knows if it's been powered on for 20 minutes. If I change the resolution, well, you know how the screen turns off for like a second? It was powered off. So you know what? I guess to kind of go back on my point, it's not smart. It's pretty fucking stupid. But yeah, now the thing is, when I change the resolution, this goes back. This applies to that specific frequency, so it's like a preset by preset basis. So that's not a realistic thing to have. I need to fix this issue. So I turned to the insides of the monitor because I searched everywhere in SMfit ACT and could not find a thing. I figured maybe there's a G2 adjustment. I also did find that inside of SMfit ACT, when I go to diagnostics and take a look at the errors, there actually is a error, and it says cut off Regelschlung am Anschlag. I probably can't put that in the video. Now this message is German for cut off control at the limit. So there's something going on. So yeah, as I said, I decided to investigate the monitor. I wanted to see if it was maybe like a G2 thing. I also took a look to see if there was any pots on any of the other PCBs that could kind of indicate the issue, but I found nothing. I'm just going to quickly show some images of the flyback because it is really nice to see the flyback in this thing, as well as some other photos of the internals, so you can just get a good look at that. But yeah, with that, I have not been able to solve this brightness issue, and I do not understand what is up. I don't know if it's maybe there's like a component that's having like an issue. I really don't want to do some P1110 shit and just swap things to figure out what works. I guess that would be a decent way to isolate a variable. Say if I swapped out like the deflection board and that fixed it, then I could take a look at the deflection board that was originally in the monitor and then just see if there's something wrong with like a, I don't know, like a capacitor or like whatever the hell. But we'll see what happens in the future. That's something for future me to look at, if I'm gonna be honest. But until then, my temporary solution has just been what you saw, where I turn up the sliders in the video amplifier section. That's pretty much it though for the internals. So let's get on to SMfit ACT, the SMfit ACT section. Here we go. right, here we are. This is SMfit ACT. Now, I am using a Windows XP virtual machine for this. It's also possible to set it up through Windows 10 or Windows 11, but from what I've attempted, it's just not fully compatible for obvious reasons. Now, in the VM, I'm using VMware. The monitor is hooked up through serial to USB, so I want to make sure that my removable devices shows that my serial cable is connected, and that is all good. So when you open SMfit ACT, you're presented with this menu here. There's service level 1, and it's basic, doesn't require like a code or anything. Then there's service level 2, does require a passcode. I did go into this in depth in the original video on the SMM21106LS, so I will be a little bit more brief this time around. So the password is Moni Lisa. Still don't know why that is. Turn off the test pattern really quick so we can have the full screen real estate. So here are the settings. You can see that my monitor is connected. I am running a 134 kilohertz signal to it, and that equates currently to 2880 by 2160p at 60 hertz. This is the serial number for it. Now, to show the error log really quick from what I was talking about, if I do load for monitor, you see that I get this error here. I still, as of right now, have yet to find a solution to this problem, but if I ever come across a solution, then I will obviously give an update on that. Hopefully one day I do, but anyways. Now, for the data, I've tried to extract a bunch of, info that might relate to that error off of it. Have never been able to find anything, so we'll just skip that data section. There's nothing really exciting to look at in there anyways, as surprising as that might sound. Just like on the portrait monitor, you can turn on and off the buttons of the monitor, and you can also disable the timings, change the time between giving the monitor a new frequency to sync to. For the brightness and contrast settings, I have the contrast minimum pushed to the max, so I can really squeeze out that brightness I need out of the monitor because of that brightness issue that I keep talking about, but it's really annoying, so there you go, there it is again. Anyways, the geometry is really nice this time around, so we're gonna go into that now. Take a close look at this. Notice something really interesting? No? Let's take a look at the geometry adjustment for the SMM21106LS. Notice a difference? That's right, my friends. There is a horizontal linearity adjustment. Like what? I don't even know how that's possible. It requires some advanced circuitry to have the option to conveniently adjust your horizontal linearity. If you know, you know, but if you don't, just please trust me when I say having this setting here is one, just a godsend, but two, technically unbelievable. All right, now I'm just going to quickly run through the settings just so you can see what that would look like via a geometry test pattern. Horizontal position goes like that. Amplitude, horizontal correction, the wonderful linearity adjustment. Take a look at that. That's impressive, ain't it? EW amplitude, EW trapezoid, EW corners asymmetrical, vertical position, vertical amplitude. As you can see, too, you have a lot of breathing room with that. Very nice. Good deflection. Vertical linearity. NS amplitude. NS trapezoid. NS corners right. NS corners left. NS bow. And then in the geometry adjustment section, H-beam offset. EW bow. EW parallelogram. VS correction. And then image rotation. Very cool. I'm going to cancel all of these so I don't lose my shit as I have completely ruined my monitor. There we go. Now for the video amplifier section. So this is that important part where I can artificially correct my brightness issue. So this is definitely related to the error that I'm getting internally from the monitor. It's this right here. I do still get this error when I have a frequency applied that isn't yet boosted from the setting. So it's not related to me like pushing these sliders to the max. So first thing you can do is I just hit cutoff and it's gonna run a little thing and then that's just what I get from it. So that's not helpful. So then I hit bypass and I get access to these. So I'm going to change the test pattern really quick so you can see how these affect the actual display of the monitor. So here are some gray and white rectangles. If I turn down the maximum background, you can see it gets extremely dark and the gray rectangle completely goes away. If I'm going to be like real with you, this is probably what it looks like when I apply like a new resolution. Now, mind you, the brightness is very close to being all the way up. So that does not mitigate this issue whatsoever. I have to go into here and fix it through this. So yeah, that's how I'm able to bypass that right now. I don't really want to be able to... It sucks that it has to be like that, but yeah, I mean, there's nothing I can do at the moment, so. Now, next thing, focus. So big update when it comes to this. So yeah, when it comes to the adjustments that you have in the focus section for this monitor, it is exactly the same as the SMM21106L. So that's pretty cool. So the exciting thing is I figured out how this section here works, the stigmatism adjustment. Very excited to tell you how this section works because I was very confused about it for a very long time. Let's get into that. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go into the SMfit ACT folder here. I'm going to pull up the calibration help PDF, this section here. So first of all, I just want to tell you about this test pattern here. Check this out. The Briggs test pattern offers a good means for checking if a monitor has adequate spatial and temporal resolution. This is confirmed when the user is able to resolve the individual checkerboards in each of the target squares. So it's a really good way, and this is just, I'm going to clarify, completely unrelated to what I was going to show you. I just think this test pattern is so fucking cool. Honestly, favorite test pattern. So basically, it's just a really good way, besides a TV line count, of being able to determine with your eyes if a resolution that the monitor is displaying is actually resolved. And if it is, how much it's resolved. That is cool as shit. Shout out to Major Briggs or whoever made this. Here's some more clarification from the manual. So users assign a number from 10 to 90 to each of the 17 groups of squares containing a checkerboard pattern. 10 represents the largest and 90 the smallest of the squares in which the user can discern the checkerboard pattern. The user assigns a number representing the smallest square in which the checkerboard pattern can still be discerned. The higher the number the user assigns, the better the evaluation of the monitor's spatial and temporal resolution is considered. So it's not black or white. It's like you get a very good idea. The corresponding numbers are portrayed in the image below to help users evaluate resolution with the Briggs image. And then yeah, just as shows. Anyways, so the astigmatism test pattern. This is what I'm actually talking about when it comes to that focus adjustment. The test pattern is composed of a black picture with white dots spaced regularly within a 3x4 matrix contained in a grid that divides the screen into 25 distinct fields. Sound familiar? No? Well, if we go to focus, how many did it just say? What's that? Oh shit. 25 distinct fields? Oh, let's just see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times 5. 25. So yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. In other words, what you can do with these settings is each square will correspond to each square in your stigmatism adjustments. So that is how you use these settings. You have a bunch of different ways of using them, and you can just control the focus in each square here. So you basically have 25 different focus points for your dynamic focus. If I'm going to be real with you, the focus on this monitor looks great. If I ever set a resolution that for some reason has a wonky focus in some of the spots, then now this time I actually know what to do. So that's pretty fucking cool. That's what that does. And if you're wondering where that would be found, you just go to test pattern and then astigmatism, and there you go. Also, with the test pattern being a weird aspect ratio depth resolution, that is because in preferences you want to set the graphic board section to the right resolution. That was a big mystery for a while, so that's good. Ambient light sensor, same thing as always, just adjust the sensor's settings as needed if you are using it. If not, then you can just ignore this. Even luminance is the same as the SMM21106L if there is a section of the monitor that is too bright. So if I decide to go to a, say, white full screen and, oh, like this section's bad, let's change the vertical amplitude. Let's change the foreground vertical shift. It's kind of hard to see. You might notice differences as the camera picks it up, but it's basically just a way to get uniform luminance and white levels across the entire screen. I think I just pissed the monitor off by doing that. So, I'm just not gonna touch it. Okay. Next, diagnostics. Online error monitoring is basically just another way to check your errors, this time in like a interval. So I don't think I really went over it in the SMM21106L, but this will basically just give me the same thing that you saw earlier. If I hit start, gives me those errors. This was just because I pissed it off with the setting you just saw me do. It also gives you the monitor temperature, which is a pretty good way to just monitor that as well. So, cool. But that's all this really does. The toolbox is a section that I don't really dare to mess with. You can turn off the deflection, turn off the power, put on a test line. The test line doesn't really seem to do much. I thought previously that it would activate vertical collapse, but no, that's not what it does. So I don't really understand why it's called a test line, but I mean, yeah. I've also downloaded the firmware of the monitor. It gave me hex files. I don't really know what to do with them. If they're valuable, I can give them to somebody who would know how to, I guess, modify things. I don't know if you'd be able to modify the horizontal and vertical frequencies, kind of like what you could do with a .dat file of Sony monitors through WinDAS, but I have not been able currently to find a thing that you can do to change that, or any settings for that matter, through the hex files. So, you know, oh well. Now the info, this is just a version of the firmware for the monitor, version 1.08. You can also see that at the bottom. Then the version of the SMfit ACT software that I'm using. As far as I'm aware, that is the latest one. Operating hours. Let's rip the Band-Aid off. 15,081. It's not terrible. It's not incredible, though. This tube has a dispenser cathode and everything. It's monochrome. It's high-end as shit. 15,000 hours on a monitor of this quality will look very different from 15,000 hours on a Chunghwa tube or Orion tube or whatever. So, yes, that's a bad number, but it's not as bad as you might think. Now, is that contributing to the brightness issue? Maybe. I personally don't think it is. At least in the sense of wear. I think it might be contributing to it in the sense of a drifting-aging issue in regards to the settings. But I don't know. The luminance calibration and luminance measurement section, right? This is what I really got excited for when I got that physical copy of SMfit ACT. Now, the unfortunate thing is, I can't use it. Yeah. Annoyingly enough, when I have the meter on the monitor and I'm ready to perform the calibration or get a reading or whatever on this specific monitor, the error that is in the monitor will then make it so that cannot happen. It will cancel the calibration or reading or whatever. And even if I clear the errors, it does not fix the issue. It will still cancel it. This issue does not persist on the SMM21106L, so it is definitely related to the brightness issue on this monitor, to the point where even a luminance calibration is not enough because I can't even do it. Yeah, that's why I'm still at a loss with this. And it sucks because I really feel like that if I get past that roadblock, then I'll be able to use this as a way to fix that brightness issue. But until then, it still persists. It's still a thing. I do plan on going into a more in-depth SMfit ACT coverage, kind of like as its own video, because I feel like the videos that I've had on these monitors have kind of made this weird conglomerate in terms of knowledge about the software. So I think a dedicated video to it would be a little bit better. So I will show how this section here works. But not in this video, primarily just because I literally can't. So that's it when it comes to SMfit ACT. Glad it could come in handy again. I'm really glad we have this software. It's a miracle it still exists. You also might have noticed that Funny Fish Guy has joined us even for the software. Really good to have him here. Feels like we're not alone. And I'll clear up the confusion. If you're wondering how I did this, I found that if you go to the SMfit ACT folder, if you scroll down, there is the Siemens CRT. It's just a bitmap image, and it's just that. So I decided to replace it with the Funny Fish Guy. Just put him on there. Yeah, that's all. I can also replace this. Maybe I'll do that too. It's kind of funny how they just leave the photos in here. If you ever come across one of these monitors someday and you wanna, have your own personalized copy of SMfit ACT, feel free to make your own modifications to these bitmap files. It allows you to have a very personal copy. It's kind of like a creepypasta, Let's get to the next chapter. We're gonna be talking about how there was another monitor. Yeah, so there was another monitor. I had 2 of these shipped to me. Also, shout out to Shank for convincing me to get 2 instead of 1, as the liquidation company did have 2 units and I just plan on buying 1. Because if the one that I bought was in vain and that was the one that died, then who really wins in that situation? So, thank you, Shank. I appreciate you tempting me to do that. But that was just a quick interjection. Anyways, it was a pretty good deal from a liquidation company. Unfortunately, Really sucks, but the other monitor was necked in shipping. The actual neck of the tube, the entirety of the neck, like as soon as the neck begins, completely just chopped. And you can see this effect because of the phosphors being blown around and destroyed on the front of the screen, as well as, well, the giant crack and the shards of glass on the side, if it wasn't obvious enough. Now, yeah, so, you know, this sucks, right? Pretty tragic. Very rare tube, destroyed completely. But I'm gonna rub some salt in my own wounds, and probably the wound that just formed on you, by telling you in excruciatingly painful detail that I omitted within that explanation, and that was the manufacture date and the hours. Alright. Here's the photo of the back of the monitor. Yeah, it's an ISO one. So it's an ISO variant SMM21106LS, so not a Siemens one. Pretty cool. Now, let's look at that date. Oh my god, what the fuck? This CRT can't even drink yet. I mean, at least the 20E1U has a buddy, but like... 2010? May 2010? That's so late! Like, CRTs were generally finished when 2007 rolled around. You're telling me that this thing was manufactured in 2010? This is probably one of the latest CRTs ever made. Like, one of the last ones ever manufactured. And it's dead. Now, I checked the hours on SMfit ACT because the actual firmware of the monitor does function. Like, all of the EEPROM data, etc. does work on the monitor. As long as I have the monitor itself plugged in through power and then have the serial cable go into the PC. I do have to turn it on, but I just don't put in a signal so it doesn't start freaking out like you saw earlier. And with that, I'm able to go into SMfit ACT and still get a reading on all of the information on it. I also extracted the firmware, which is the same version as my functioning unit, and by transferring the data and the firmware to the working one, that still didn't solve my brightness issue. I reverted it back to the original firmware that was on it, which, like I said, was the same version, but just to see if that would somehow fix that brightness issue, if it was like, you know, like a firmware thing where it's like the aging algorithm fucked up or something like that, but no, it just, that didn't fix it, so kind of sucks. But yeah, when I went into there, I checked the hours, 3,321, okay. Yeah, so this thing probably looked really good. At the very least, I have a parts unit, which is useful for monitors like this, where it's going to be excruciatingly hard to get, say, a replacement flyback or whatever. But not like this, man. Not like this. I mean, like, what are the chances of any of the components in this thing failing anyways? But, I mean, I guess if they do, I have this monitor for that. That's pretty much it for that broken monitor. I will obviously hold on to it because it's going to be very useful for future's sake. And, I mean, who knows? Maybe it'll be a useful tool when it comes to figuring out the issue with the brightness, but until then, oh man, I'll never let it down, dude. I will never let it down. Like, if that monitor worked, I would have, with this one, the functioning one, I would have removed the anti-glare coating on that to see how bright I can really get this thing. I want to see 1500 nits on this thing so badly, but it's just, I can't. Alright, let's get to the TV line count. So this is actually a lot more fleshed out in terms of knowing what the actual shit is going on compared to the SMM21201P, because this is a native 4x3 display. It's scanning in 4x3, unlike the 3x4 of the previous monitors, so that was a little bit of a confusing, wacky thing. So now we don't have to worry about that with this, which is cool, because it's just a normal-ass monitor, for the most part. Now, if you want a really detailed, in-depth explanation, I'm not going to do it here again, but check out my video on the SMM21201P. There is a section where I go fully into depth on the TV line count and LOHR calculation and all that and how that works and what it represents and everything. But for the sake of this video, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do it assuming that you know what it is already. So of course, you're not going to know what the TV line count of a monitor is until you put it to the test. So in this first clip, I'm running it at 2880 by 2160 progressive, so 2880 by 2160p at 60 hertz. Now it is a little bit blurry. This is probably because of bandwidth reasons, and also just because, hey, we need to find the bottleneck. We also might just have to increase the resolution in general because it might just be able to resolve higher than this. And indeed, upping it to 3200 by 2400i at 60 hertz, we can see that it becomes a lot clearer. However, it turns out it can get even clearer than this just by a little bit to allow you to get a definitive answer when looking at that TV line count. So let's up it just a little bit more. So now we're running it at 4000 by 300i at 50 hertz. Now, the reason why it's 50 hertz is because, well, ever since I changed motherboards, for some weird-ass reason, there's like this weird max frequency, also a max resolution, like just number-wise that I can go up to. I don't know why. I was on a Z690 Tough before. I'm now on a Z790 Edge Ti Max. Both have DisplayPort 1.4 ports for the integrated graphics, so that's not a limitation. I don't know if it's a chipset thing. I do not know what the reason is. I could do higher resolutions on the Z690 Tough, so I don't know. But anyways, 4000 by 300i at 50 hertz. Yes, you're not seeing things fully as what they would be in person because my camera can't do 1/25 for the shutter rate, so I'm doing 1/50. But regardless of that, you're still able to understand what this is doing. Of course, the lines on 20 are fully distinguished from each other, so obviously 2000 at the minimum here. So what we'll do, as done before, is half the size of the picture, so now you can assume that these numbers are doubled. Now going down and down and down, you can see that it stops right here. I don't want to say down there, but right here. So I would say right at 13. Therefore, 2600 TV lines. That's what I'm going to say is the amount. I do not think it's anything more than that. So 2600 TV line for this monitor, which that's insane. It's like really good. It's more than double my P1110. Like, it's really good. And my P1110 looks pretty fucking good to me. So, it's really good. Now, the exciting thing with this number is that this time around, we can actually do a LOHR calculation. So let's do that now. I'm actually very excited to do this because I have not calculated the LOHR yet, just at all. So I'm going to be doing it right now as I record this. So I'm actually very excited. I guess that means you'll be getting my live reaction as well to it. All right, here's our equation. LOHR equals TV lines multiplied by 4/3. We can actually do that this time. So let's open up our calculator really quick. So what do we got here? We got 2600 TV lines. Plug that in, multiply it by 4/3, and we get 3466.66 basically repeating. So, given perfect circumstances, 3466 is our maximum resolvable horizontal resolution. In other words, plug that into a 4x3, I guess, resolution calculator just to get the vertical of that. So 3464 by 2598. That's a weird-ass resolution. That is the maximum resolvable resolution for this monitor. As definitive as you can get. So mind you, if you have messed with resolutions on CRTs, you might be aware of the fact that going above the legitimately resolvable resolution doesn't necessarily mean it's going to look bad. And that is obviously exactly the case here. Especially because you don't have a mask. Like, it's going to look incredible the higher and higher you go, as long as your bandwidth isn't shitting the bed so it becomes, like, blurry as hell or whatever. However, 3464 by 2598, weird res, looks really good. It looks really good on this monitor. Like, holy shit. For some reason, I feel like things look sharper on this monitor. That might be because of the brightness thing, though. The brightness thing just might give, like, that weird illusion where things look sharper and realer just because it's brighter. I don't know though. It just looks really fucking good. Like really, really good. It's also very obvious that the LOHR-TV line count wasn't as high on this one compared to the SMM21106L S for many obvious reasons if you're looking at the specifications of it, but also just because of the fact that when you have a resolution applied, even if it's in the lower range, you do get a significantly less amount of scan lines compared to the SMM21106L S, indicating that yes, this thing isn't going to be resolving as much as that monitor can. So yeah, it's a difference there as well. I think that's everything. Let's get on to the final chapter of the video. Let's get to that now. Alright, so quick preface before we get to the content montage. I apologize for the insane delay on this video. There was a lot of trying to diagnose the issue with the brightness with this monitor, which I could not find the solution to, at least as of right now. A lot of things with life have been going on. There's gonna be another bit of a delay from this video to the next one, primarily because I am having surgery about like a month from now. Maybe I'll be able to get a video out by then. That'd be pretty cool, because then that can hold me over. But I'm having like facial feminization surgery. Also, yeah, surprise, wow, Dig Beal. That's the reason why. Being a little bit transparent here. Being trans is gonna destroy my quality of videos. No, seriously, all right. Enjoy the montage. I will see you in the next one. I don't know if that'll be before the surgery or after the surgery, but until then, it's not gonna be as crazy as this video. So, very happy to finally get this one out. It's been weighing on me for quite a bit, and I've been excited to get this information out there because there's not a lot on this particular monitor. Here we go.